Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. Life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. Once you label me, you negate me. People demand freedom of speech as a compensation for the freedom of thought which they seldom use. I see it all perfectly. There are two possible situations. One can either do this or that. My honest opinion and my friendly advice is this: do it or do not do it. You will regret both. The highest and most beautiful things in life are not to be heard about, nor read about, nor seen, but if one will, are to be lived. Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. There is nothing with which every man is so afraid as getting to know how enormously much he is capable of doing and becoming. The tyrant dies and his rule is over. The martyr dies and his rule begins. Boredom is the root of all evil, the despairing refusal to be oneself. Life has its own hidden forces which you can only discover by living. Listen to the cry of a woman in labor at the hour of giving birth. Look at the dying man's struggle at his last extremity, and then tell me whether something that begins and ends thus could be intended for enjoyment. God creates out of nothing. Wonderful, you say? Yes, to be sure, but he does what is still more wonderful. He makes saints out of sinners. Love does not alter the beloved, it alters itself. Personality is only ripe when a man has made the truth his own. The more a man can forget, the greater the number of metamorphoses which his life can undergo. The more he can remember, the more divine his life becomes. At the bottom of enmity between strangers lies indifference. Marriage brings one into fatal connection with custom and tradition, and traditions and customs are like the wind and weather, altogether incalculable. The truth is a snare. You cannot have it without being caught. You cannot have the truth in such a way that you catch it, but only in such a way that it catches you. Since my earliest childhood, a barb of sorrow has lodged in my heart. As long as it stays, I am ironic. If it is pulled out, I shall die. Purity of heart is to will one thing. It is so hard to believe because it is so hard to obey. It belongs to the imperfection of everything human that man can only attain his desire by passing through its opposite. If I am capable of grasping God objectively, I do not believe, but precisely because I cannot do this, I must believe. How absurd men are. They never use the liberties they have, they demand those they do not have. They have freedom of thought, they demand freedom of speech. I feel as if I were a piece in a game of chess when my opponent says of it, that piece cannot be moved. There are, as is known, insects that die in the moment of fertilization. So it is with all joy. Life's highest, most splendid moment of enjoyment is accompanied by death. Concepts, like individuals, have their histories and are just as incapable of withstanding the ravages of time as are individuals. But in and through all this, they retain a kind of homesickness for the scenes of their childhood. Don't forget to love yourself. To dare is to lose one's footing momentarily. Not to dare is to lose oneself. Prayer does not change God, but it changes him who prays. Our life always expresses the result of our dominant thoughts. What is a poet? An unhappy person who conceals profound anguish in his heart, but whose lips are so formed that as sighs and cries pass over them, they sound like beautiful music. Face the facts of being what you are, for that is what changes what you are. Love is all, it gives all, and it takes all. The function of prayer is not to influence God, but rather to change the nature of the one who prays. Faith is the highest passion in a human being. Many in every generation may not come that far, but none comes further. Patience is necessary, and one cannot reap immediately where one has sown. Be that self which one truly is. It seems essential in relationships and all tasks that we concentrate only on what is most significant and important. Most men pursue pleasure with such breathless haste that they hurry past it. Take away paradox from the thinker and you have a professor. People commonly travel the world over to see rivers and mountains, new stars, garish birds, freak fish, grotesque breeds of human. They fall into an animal stupor that gapes at existence, and they think they have seen something. People understand me so poorly that they don't even understand my complaint about them not understanding me. Not just in commerce, but in the world of ideas, too, our age is putting on a veritable clearance sale. Everything can be had so dirt cheap that one begins to wonder whether in the end anyone will want to make a bid. Just as in earthly life, lovers long for the moment when they are able to breathe forth their love for each other, to let their souls blend in a soft whisper, so the mystic longs for the moment when in prayer he can, as it were, creep into God. Since boredom advances, and boredom is the root of all evil, no wonder then that the world goes backwards, that evil spreads. This can be traced back to the very beginning of the world. The gods were bored, therefore they created human beings. During the first period of a man's life, the greatest danger is not to take the risk. A man who is a physical being is always turned toward the outside, thinking that his happiness lies outside him, finally turns inward and discovers that the source is within him. Trouble is the common denominator of living. It is the great equalizer. One can advise comfortably from a safe port. Far from idleness being the root of all evil, it is rather the only true good. The paradox is really the pathos of intellectual life, and just as only great souls are exposed to passions, it is only the great thinker who is exposed to what I call paradoxes, which are nothing else than grandiose thoughts in embryo. Old age realizes the dreams of youth. Look at Dean Swift. In his youth, he built an asylum for the insane. In his old age, he was himself an inmate. Because of its tremendous solemnity, death is the light in which great passions, both good and bad, become transparent, no longer limited by outward appearances. I begin with the principle that all men are bores. Surely no one will prove himself so great a bore as to contradict me in this.